So welcome to my video about trees and woodlands, which were a very formative part of my childhood. The particular woods that I've driven out to were really the only safe refuge I had from the family life that I needed to escape from, and I spent most of my time in there, probably from about the age of 4 years old or 5 years old. And we've done a lot of work on how sort of place and objects and memories all connect to create part of our identity. And I'm going to show you areas within the woodlands which I've never forgotten. I've got memories there. You know, it was a place I went to invent stories. It probably created me to be the person I am, really, having that space to just go and hide away and you know, invent my own world, really. And I think quite importantly, when I was getting very ill during my 20s, I used to drive out to the woods and I'd stay there for hours, just sat on a rock, you know, and it was the only safe place I had. You know, I didn't know any other safe place I could go. So that carried on into adulthood for me, just all those childhood memories that I had. So they've been a very important part of my life. And I'm glad that I can show some of those things to you now. So what we're going to do, I'm going to take a trip up there and just do a few clips of the areas that were important to me. Hopefully enjoy it. I'll enjoy it because I feel like I'm on Countryfile or something. We are on the outskirts of Sheffield. It's a secret location because I don't like sharing my woods with anybody. I always used to think they were my woods, and I hated it when I saw other people in them, and I think I'm still a bit like that now, so I've not changed that much. So onwards we go, and I'll catch up with you in the woods. So this was the entrance down to the woods, and as you can see, I had loads of fields to play in as well. Just went on for miles in my head. I mean, I know it's probably not that far. I feel very lucky that I grew up with this just across the road from my house. And if I just zoom in a little over here, we can see the tree. That second tree on the left was a tree that I used to sit under, and I called it Wurzel Gummidge. I believed it was Wurzel Gummidge reincarnated as a tree for some reason, and I used to sit underneath it and talk to it for hours and hours and hours. It does kind of look like a person to me. It's got arms reaching up into the air. So that's where I used to sit when I wasn't in the depths of the woods, which we're now going to venture down into. So here we have the stream where I used to sit for hours and try to catch fish. I never did catch any, but I always held on to that childhood hope that I would catch fish. I don't think it was really deep enough for fish, but it kept me entertained for hours. And I still live in hope, actually. You never know. We might find one today on our travels. And I'm really suffering for my art here, because I am wading through it barefoot and it is absolutely freezing. But that's what I used to do as a kid, and the cold never seemed to bother me, so we're really reliving that. And yeah, I'll update you if we find any fish. And so now we're coming up to some of my favourite things that used to appear at this time of year. and that is bluebells. Absolutely beautiful, just carpets of them all around the wood. And there used to be a very rare white bell that you could find, and perhaps 2 or 3 would grow in the whole woods, and me and my sister would have a competition to search for that white bell. And when we found it, we thought it was magical and something great would happen to us. Nothing great ever did happen, but the excitement of finding that just amongst a sea of blue, just one white bell, was absolutely incredible, and I've never forgotten that feeling. So perhaps we'll find a white bell like we might find a fish as we carry on. So let's hope so, keep our fingers crossed. Now around here is where the wild garlic grows, and all these leaves you can see around are just wild garlic. You can see some that's just coming into flower there, and the scent of garlic is beautiful. It's heavy on the senses, it's just so powerful. If we had smell-o-vision, you'd be able to smell it now. It's absolutely beautiful. And you know, you can use the flower, you can use the flowers in salads and things. And obviously as a child I used to believe that I would live in the woods someday, and wild garlic leaves were something that I would eat. They are especially yummy if you give them a rub, and yeah, oh yeah, they still taste delicious, absolutely lovely. So yeah, so these are the sort of growing grounds of the wild garlic, and what I would have survived on had I lived in the woods as a child. Okay, so now we're coming up onto an area that I find quite bittersweet, because it was where a gigantic tree used to stand that we all called the monkey tree, and for perhaps 5 generations children and teenagers will build rope swings off it, and they were the scariest rope swings ever. And this tree, I think it seemed the largest tree in the woods, and just to see it laid down on its side looking so small is quite sad for me. Hopefully from its remainders you can get some sort of sense of its size. It was a very, very big tree, and it had a huge branch extending from it that some brave teenagers would climb along and put a rope swing up, and you basically would go all the way up here, and then you would swing right down past where that little blue rope swing is there. You'd swing all the way down, almost over to the stream, and it was absolutely terrifying. Although as a child you really don't have those sort of fears. I don't think I'd dare attempt it now. But yeah, so that was the monkey tree, and when it was standing it was the greatest tree in the forest, and I really mourn the loss of it, and I'm glad knowing that so many generations of people will have memories of it, and probably a lot of memories of hurting themselves as well over there when they fell off or flew off the end of the stick on the swing. This is the exact spot where I learnt what the word meander meant. And I remember my sister bringing me down to the woods, and we were stood here, and she showed me how it was curving around the landscape. It had formed its way around there, and she said that's what it's called meandering, and it sort of curves all the way around. And I'll never forget standing here just on this bit of pavement, and not pavement, path, and just looking and remembering that word for the rest of my life. So that was an important lesson for me. Now here we have a very special tree where I discovered something when I was very young, and it was a very old glass bottle that the tree had literally grown around, and any amount of force could pull that out. I guess it's a really old glass bottle, but you could see how the tree has just grown around it. And the romantic me used to think I would, when I was a grown-up, bring a male suitor here and test him, and if he could pull the bottle out, a little like, you know, the sword in the stone, then he would be the right man for me. I've still not found that man, and I guess he might think I was a bit weird if I asked him to pull the bottle out, but you never know, it might come out one day. Now this rock I called Frog's Mouth. I think if you look at it long enough, you really can see the face of a huge, well, it's probably a toad, but I called it a frog. And Frog's Mouth was where I often sat and did my thinking, especially when I used to come back here when I was unwell. I'd just sit on the rock deep into the night time sometimes, and it was one of my favourite places. So I hope you can all see that face of a frog or toad. I have to look closely, but that's one of the most special places in the woods. Now we're coming up to one of my most important spots in the wood, which is where I used to be able to spy from, as you could actually see my house from here. So I had a little outpost, and I could look and see if my dad was home, and if he was home, then I would continue to stay in the woods. So this was my lookout point, and you know, you can't really get a better lookout point than this. It's absolutely beautiful, and the stump that I used to sit on is still there, so nothing's changed. I still have my lookout point. So here we are, back where we began. I hope you've enjoyed sharing my woodland narrative and journey back through my childhood memories. I hope it's allowed you to see how important memories are, memories collected as a child that remain with you as an adult. Everything that I found special as a 7 or 8 year old, I still find special now. This is one of the safest places I can find in the world. I feel so at home here. I'm sure I've demonstrated that with some of my tales. Unfortunately, there was just not enough time to tell you all the tales I could tell you, but I think I've given you a pretty good idea about the relationships I had with the trees and the woods, and how much I loved it. I didn't catch any fish whilst we were walking around, and I didn't find any white bluebells, but there we go. Maybe next time. So thank you for taking this journey with me, and I hope that, you know, it might encourage you to get out in the woods and make some of your own stories. Thank you.